What's up, everybody? It's George T from The Wagon. This week, I'm not going to show you how to do something. I'm going to show you how I prepare to do something, which is a little different. This week, we're going to go into what it takes to rewire an air-cooled VW. Whether you're wiring an early VW bug with only 4 fuses, or if you're wiring your mid-60s 8 fuse, or if you're dealing with the nightmare that is a 12 fuse bay window, the preparation we're doing here will help you through any one of those tasks. If you're looking for the specifics and showing you where you connect every individual wire, this ain't your video. What I'm going to show you here is the steps that I take to organize the chaos that is an air-cooled VW's wiring. What we will be installing today is a Wolfsburg West wiring harness complete kit for a 70 to 71 bay window. First thing I do whenever I get a wiring harness like this, I'll open it up. They give you a table of contents here. Your component list is there. And I go through and I make sure I have all of them. We have 30 miscellaneous sub harnesses. That's all these that you see here. And so what I'm going to do with those to make my life a lot easier, they give a description and a diagram of each harness in there. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to find each harness and then label it. I'm going to put some yellow tape on it and have each sub harness labeled, so I know when I get to that section, that's the harness that I'm going to be working with. So the more organized you can be while you're doing this, the better off you are going to be. So I've gone through, I've made sure that all of my components are accounted for, that they give you in the kit. So next is going to be going through and labeling all my sub harnesses. We've gone through and labeled every one of our sub looms and all of our bigger looms, and we used the descriptions here that show us basically what ends it has on it. So you see that little tang they're showing you there, that shows it as a relay socket end, and this is just a regular spade end. It gives you the length, 180 millimeters, 25 millimeters to an inch, so do the math on it and it'll tell you. Then we set up a tape measure along here, and we're basically comparing them size, and made sure that we had every wire there that it's calling for here labeled now. Very comprehensive kit. There's a lot of additional wires here, and just taking the time to go through and label them will actually save time in the long run of just digging through this pile, constantly looking for the looms to match the task we're on. Non-operable condition right now because the owner pulled some of the wiring off and also pulled the fuse panel down. So hopefully everything in here is in really good shape that we're working with. When you're doing any wiring on a bay window, you want to remove that panel. It just gives you access to so much stuff inside that dash. The first order of business is going to be removing the main loom. Goes through the front firewall there, drops down, and runs all along the frame section to the back. What we're going to do is we're going to disconnect it at the front and end up pulling it through with a fish. So you're going to pull it actually from back to front, pull the fish here, and then the fish is going to pull the loom back that way. We're going to start by removing all the old wiring from the vehicle, every bit of it. We've already taken the lower kicks off. Luckily our knobs were out. This is unscrewed because the customer's been playing with his own wiring for a bit. Yeah, there's a lot of parts and pieces to this one. gone through and I've removed all the switches out of there. And in the instructions it says to note how looms are run. So you see this nice big grouping right here. This is from the turn signal switch. This loom is coming out of our column there. So it's going to be turn signal switch there. And ignition switch. Ignition switch is this one. I know that from the coloring, the red, black, the black, all that good stuff there. And this is my turn signal switch from the coloring on that. VWs are color coded. I'm not super proficient in them, but I know from experience what goes where, what colors are going to connect to what. There is so much wiring in this. To remove your switches from the dash, it will require a specialty tool here for removing the escutcheon on the exterior there. This drops over the stem, indexes into that, and then it can remove that separately. And that's actually what is sandwiching these in the dash. On type 1, type 2, type 3 alike. They all take the same sort of escutcheon, so this is a tool that is a must, available at Wolfsburg West. Snap-on makes a version as well, as does Hazit, Matco, all of them across the board. Finding these is getting really difficult, so do yourself a favor when you order your wiring kit, order the escutcheon tool as well. I would definitely say this is an intimidating wiring job. A lot of wiring here. So we got 12, and you can see I got 2 that were burned, meaning these were overloaded at one point in time and something was shorting on them. So hopefully everything still works. Not my favorite work, wiring, especially when it's been goofed around by people. That makes it 10 times worse. All right, we're gonna start disconnecting this fuse panel. We got the fuse panel pulled out of there, and I see 2 problematic areas. This thing, there's evidence that this was on fire. What I did here, this is a fuse clip from a type 1, normally goes into the body. So I modified this bracket to accept it, so when this gets pushed into it, then it locks it in there. It's a little, I mean, I'm sure it's just like the original. You got to put something in there to get it out, but this is spring steel, so I have faith that it'll keep the tension on that. It's made to hold a fuse panel clip in place anyways, and it's just basically grabbing that little tab right there. We got the headlights pulled out. We're going to clean out the buckets. The kit comes with new grommets for both sides. So once we get all this dirt out of here, we'll pull those looms out on the interior and put our new grommets in place on both headlights. We've gone through and cleaned everything here. Took some steel wool to all the chrome on here. Ocean went through and like detail brushed everything in here to get all the dirt off of it. And we've done the same thing on your headlight rings. Just gone through and really detailed them up. And there's the last one there. Looking really sharp. gone through and we've disconnected everything. Now we got to get to the point where we're going to be pulling fish lines through. My harness, this bus was riddled with electrical issues in the past, and it has burned wires throughout. And this is what we're going to be pulling through to get the fish lines with everything disconnected from underneath the dash. Now we're going to go and disconnect everything from the motor compartment. You saw Ocean went through and disconnected this rear loom for the lighting, but now we have to get all of our power and dummy lights and everything off of the engine so we can start setting up the loom to pull. It's going to be pulled from back to front, and then when the new loom will come in from front to back. I cut all the additional wires off of the old loom. We have zero intention of ever using this again. And I've made it to where it should pull out fairly easily. But before we do that, we're gonna tape a fish line to it. So as we pull the loom through the body, through the frame, do the frame again, and back into the body, that we have a fish line, and this is a 16-foot impy heavy-duty throttle cable that we're gonna use for our fish line here. That way our fish line goes all the way through. We'll disconnect it in the front again, connect a new loom to it, and pull it right back through the same exact path. So I usually overlap about a foot when I'm doing these, and I start a little bit before it because I want to make sure that we get that end in there. And you want to make sure you're wrapping this tight when you're doing it, as tight as you can, because the more slop you put on it, the more difficult it's going to be to pull through tighter spaces. So now I'm pulling it tight using the fact that it's attached to the car still to make sure that we are getting that. And the tighter you get it, because this is kind of a smooth cable or a smooth sheeting that we're attaching to, the better chance your fish has of staying on it through the pull. I don't foresee any issues or any problems. And this is just for the main harness. There'll be two sub harnesses in the back here. One will be reverse lights and the other will be for the gas gauge. So this is attached to our loom. So hopefully we'll be able to start pulling it from the front and have our fish line staying through all the areas that this went through. There's a tab here that I had to open up and take the loom out of. There are several of them on the frame. We're gonna go underneath. Now they've got the fish connected. We're gonna raise the bus up, undo the tabs along the frame, and start pulling. I'd recommend lubing it up as you're pulling it. So we use a silicone spray. When we're underneath, you have to disconnect the 13 millimeter on the back of the starter. That's gonna have your number 30, your main wire coming off of it. And then you have to pull the tab off of the starter, that'd be your 50. Both of those need to be disconnected from the back over here. And if you look here, these metal prongs that are holding the loom in place, there's gonna be a few of them throughout. And we gotta make sure you free those from it. There's a piece of conduit in here. I got a couple more of those tabs to undo, front and back, and then we're gonna start pulling the loom. We got our tabs disconnected, and I've disconnected everything from the starter. We're gonna be removing the belly pan so we can have access to where the loom comes out and starts coming up through here, and then enters into that conduit. There's our fish, our line that we have in there. Because we did that nice connection there, it hasn't even moved down. And we're gonna do the same thing with the other loom, and I'll show you how we prep that to pull through the opposite way. We're going to unravel the main loom, identify front from rear, and get it prepared to pull through. A really good indicator of front are these elongated ones you're seeing here, because they go specifically into these provided tabs right there. This is going to be the front and this will be the rear. So it's a good idea at this point to familiarize yourself with the connections you're looking at. That's going to be the back of the starter on the lug. That will be 50. That kicks the starter on the solenoid. Here we have fuel sending wire, and this is really short in the loom because this is actually made to go to a voltage regulator. We have an alternator, we don't have a voltage regulator anymore. Our oil dummy light and our coil wire. And then here on out, we're gonna be running into turn signal brake for one side, deck lid light, and then our other turn signal for the other side. So this is going to be where we're going to connect our fish. And all of these additional looms that are here, we're gonna need to tighten them up. So the same way we tape that fish together, we're gonna be taping all these points here with the electrical tape. So as we pull it through, we're not pulling a bunch of loose connections and things that potentially get ripped off. We have to make it nice and streamlined, so as we're pulling through, we're not snagging on anything. So the first thing I'm gonna do, everywhere you have one of these loose connections like this, you just wanna put a strand of electrical tape just to bunch it up and to keep it all together. But even with that, just to hold it together. And so now this one here, I'll be putting them on this end. So I'm gonna continue on down this loom and get the whole thing done. So everywhere that had a separation in the wiring is now wrapped and taped to where it's basically a smooth loom. So that's my fish coming out of here. I'm going to cut this back and we'll have access to that cable. We're going to tape the new loom to the fish and then start pulling the opposite direction going back to the rear. From this point here, I will have my assistant pull on the fish line while we feed the loom in. You want to watch as it's going in. You want to make sure it's not snagging on anything and make sure it comes out of the hole on the bottom of the front nose before you even attempt to take it anywhere down the frame rails. So I know this is going to make it up there. We're going to start running it to the back. The first indicator of length is going to be when we get to the starter. So we have our conduit here that our fish is coming out of. I'm just going to go and do a blow through on it. Look at all that came out of the back. We're going to be utilizing some silicone spray. We pulled the entire loom out of the nose, so it's all just kind of coiled up around here. But our fish is still going in the same pattern that the loom was going through before, so there's no mistaking of running it the wrong way. I'm going to be proactive with this and spray inside there, and I'm putting quite a bit in there. And as I'm feeding the loom in there, I'll be adding some to the actual loom itself. We're going to start feeding it through right now. And you want to make sure that you're guiding this thing, because there's a bunch of holes that it's going through in this front frame section before you even make it to the conduit. So now we are in the conduit. So I'm going to let that skinny stuff go. It ain't going to have much fight going on there. Now we start getting into bigger stuff. This is my first big one right here, so I'm going to spray that one. So we're out, right? Yep. All right, so we've pulled it all the way to the back of the conduit, and like I said, our starter lug will be the indicator of where the loom needs to be in position to the vehicle. So we're going to figure that out now. We've pulled that loom all the way through, so we have it here, and right there is the eyelet that goes onto the lug on the starter right there. So once I actually cut all this tape back off of it and I get that hooked up to the starter, then I can actually move the loom front and back to get it where it needs to go and find its final point. And once we do, we can start taking the ones like this and put the loom inside of it and crimp them down once we're happy with its location. So I'm pretty confident in where we have all this at, and we'll see where we're at in the front. I know this seems like an obvious one, but I go through the instructions line by line. I read this from front to back before I even start the wiring on this. And then to help myself out with knowing where I'm at on the job, I highlight every connection that I've finalized on this to know where I am when I look at each individual page. Earlier in the video, you saw us labeling each one of our individual looms. I take the same instruction sheet from the labeling and I'll highlight when I've terminated those connections as well. And each loom comes with a factory diagram. There will be things in this kit and in any kit that's not covered in the instructions they give you. One of the best tech tips I can give you is to make yourself a key for each one of your switches that goes to the vehicle. If you get yourself a magnifying glass, I got old man eye, so it requires that. Each one of these is numbered and they tell you exactly where they go by that numbering. So I've drawn each one of my switches on the back of my instructions, so this is going to stay with the vehicle. I've drawn every one of my switches, and each tab, all these tabs here, are all labeled on each one of these switches. So I don't need to pick this up in my magnifying glass and every time to go, what number is that? I've made an accurate key, and I use my key that I made to wire up each individual switch. There's going to be ways that we can shorten the troubleshooting when you actually start testing the wiring to see if everything's working. Number one being, immediately we test the bulbs. So I got one side of this bulb that's not working. If we were to put that in that housing, we'd be chasing problems going, oh, why isn't that light working? So first thing we do is we test the bulb. All right, so we got ourselves another bulb and both sides are testing out. Now we know the bulb works. So now we go over to the housing. We've got our brake light, and I don't have a running light. Now I know I have a problem with this housing right here. Once you know the actual housing works, then you put it into the car. And at that point, we do another test on it to make sure that both lights are coming on. So once we know they're working without the lenses on it, even after we put the lenses back on it, because that can affect your grounding issues, we'll do one more test on them. That way we know all our housings work. There's no issue with them. Our bright light and our low light works. So when it comes to diagnosing what's happening, we know where to start looking. We've put all of our light fixtures in and they've been bench tested before they make it in here. We've double checked every connection around the bus and we've used our instructions to go over everything to verify that everything's connected properly. So with all the fuses removed from the fuse panel up front, I then go to connect my negative cable on. The first thing you're going to look for, if you connect your negative cable on and it sparks, something's on or something is shorting. So that's the very first thing you're going to watch for. So as I bring this up here and you're not seeing a spark, we know that nothing is getting power right now and nothing is shorting. It's at this point that we've connected the battery, we didn't get a spark, and now we come in here and we put fuses in every one of the circuits with the battery still disconnected. Make sure you're looking at your stock wiring diagram to know what color fuses go in each individual location. The majority of them will be a white porcelain fuse. This is our wiring diagram that Wolfsburg West provides in the kit. This is a color-coded diagram, and as you can see, I have all white fuses in there on all locations, and that's what we have in there. All white fuses across the board. Do not put bigger fuses to correct a problem. If you are popping a fuse, there's a short somewhere, correct it. Do not put bigger fuses. That's how fires start. If you've done your wiring correctly and you've tested everything out of the car like I told you to, as you're doing the testing, you should have no issues, no problems. Things that I've discovered, when you start having problems with rear taillights, it's usually your grounds. Okay, on this particular application, when we replaced the grounds, we made sure to clean the metal again, and if the hardware was too corroded, we replaced that as well. But always refer to your grounds before you start checking anything else if you're confident in your wiring and you went by diagrams. And also remember, when you get into the later model cars, you have to have keyed ignition on for your headlights to turn on. I think that's something that took place in 68 or 69. It might have been in 71, like this is a 71. I'm not sure, but that is something you need to pay attention to. So there it is. We did the wiring on this bus. Like I said, this video is not about the individual task of wiring individual cars. It's telling you how I go through it, what we do to make sure that we get it done. So these instructions are irreplaceable. make sure you follow them to the letter. Look at your factory diagrams and double check everything you're doing on it. So with the basic steps I showed you, with taking the time to prepare the loom, to mark everything, to make sure that everything's accounted for that's supposed to be in this, and then the way that we go through upon termination of highlighting every connection after it's been done, all that stuff is going to help you keep this chaos in order. So I appreciate you guys watching. I'm up to 1,500 plus subscribers now, which is awesome. I thank every one of you that watch these videos. We're trying to put out content for you guys, and I'm doing the best I can. So remember, October 3rd through the 5th, 2024 in Las Vegas, Nevada, we got one crazy weekend coming up. We got a Friday meet and greet with a strip cruise, Saturday daytime car show. Saturday evening is the world famous Let's Talk Dubs poker run with a chance to win $3,000 in cash prizes. That's right, $3,000. Who else is doing that? Nobody. Plus you get to do the best thing, and that's use your Volkswagen for a VW show. So come on out to Las Vegas, October 3rd through the 5th, 2024 at the Orleans Hotel and Casino for the Wagon and Let's Talk Dubs presents One Crazy Weekend. We'll see you guys next week.